Paul Graham from Optimal Body Personal Training. Today, I'm going to talk about insulin, carbs, and weight loss. I decided to do this video because recently I saw online someone saying insulin is causing the obesity epidemic. I've also had a lot of clients lately who tell me that they're scared to eat bananas or even baby carrots because they're too high in carbohydrates or sugars. My hope with this video is that I'm going to dispel some of the most common myths people believe are true and help you get a better understanding of what really happens with insulin, blood sugar, and weight loss. My hope is that people watching this video, it might help them to alleviate some of the stress and anxiety they're feeling around eating what are healthy foods like bananas, carrots, and other things that they might view as being high in carbs. First thing is to understand if you're gaining weight, it's because you're consuming more calories than you're burning out. If you're losing weight, it's because you're burning out more calories than you're consuming. This might sound obvious to some people, but I think that a lot of different diets and programs have people believing that calories in versus calories out don't matter. When every diet, every program out there that's for weight loss gets someone to lose weight because they're putting them into an energy deficit where you're burning out more energy than you're consuming. So getting excess carbohydrates can make you gain weight, or decreasing how much carbohydrates you're eating can make you lose weight. Obviously, getting too much carbohydrates in excess can create issues, things like type 2 diabetes, for example. However, this doesn't mean carbs or insulin are bad things. So first, what is insulin? So I'm going to simplify this. When you eat carbohydrates, your body will turn those into sugars. And then insulin will help to take the sugar from the bloodstream and store it into your muscles and into your liver. If you get an excessive amount of carbohydrates, more than your body has room in the muscles and the liver to store these carbs, then your body goes through a process where it converts this into fat, and then it can become stored as body fat if you're getting an excessive amount of calories. So the problem is when there's an excess of the carbohydrates. It's not insulin itself or the carbohydrates itself. A lot of people don't realize when you're consuming protein foods, you also get a release of insulin. For example, one study, they had people eat various different types of foods in the same caloric amounts and measure the impact it had on their insulin levels. They did this as a percentage number. So they used white bread as the baseline of 100%, and then it measured what percentage other foods were relative to this on the impact on insulin levels. So some people might be surprised to learn that protein-dense foods also cause an increase in insulin. Beef wound up having a 51% rating, cheese 45, white pasta at 40, popcorn 54, and brown rice 62. Then there were some types of protein-dense foods that had a lower impact on insulin, and some types of carbohydrate foods that had a much higher impact. But the important thing to understand from this is protein foods also impact your insulin levels. So if insulin is the problem or cause of obesity or becoming overweight, then eating protein foods would potentially create a problem as well, wouldn't it? So hopefully you're seeing that insulin is a hormone that's doing a job. It's not a bad thing. It's not a problem as long as the system's regulating properly. Going back to what I was saying earlier, how if you get an excessive amount of carbohydrates, they get stored as body fat. So right now with keto being really popular, people talk about, oh, eat as much fat as you want. That's not a problem. It's the carbs that'll get you in trouble. So what actually happens? I'm not going to go through the complex physiological process that turns carbs into fat, but I am going to explain something that's really important to understand. The process of converting carbohydrates to body fat isn't a very efficient process. When your body takes the excess carbohydrates and then converts them into stored body fat, you're going to lose about 20 to 25% of that energy just from having those processes take place in the body. On the other hand, when you're consuming dietary fat in an excessive amount, you lose very little percentage of this to store it as body fat. So it's actually a much more efficient process. Again, I want to stress this. This doesn't mean dietary fat is bad. It just means it gets stored a little bit more efficiently as body fat than carbohydrates do, which if you think logically makes sense. So a lot of people look at having high blood sugar levels as being a problem, which it definitely can be. However, there's a lot of confusion around this where people think that they need to take out all carbohydrates so that their blood sugar levels don't get too high. But there's a lot of factors that impact this. What type of carbohydrates are you having? What other types of foods are you having at that meal? Are you getting protein? Are you getting fats? Are you getting fiber? All these different factors impact your blood sugar levels after a meal. So for example, one study wanted to compare two different meals to each other. The two meals were exactly the same in terms of the content of the food. So they consumed the exact same amount, the exact same type of food 1 week apart. So one of the times, the participants in the study consumed the carbohydrate-dense foods, which were bread and orange juice in this case, 15 minutes before consuming the fat and protein and vegetable portion of the meal. And then they measured blood sugar levels. Then, what they did the second time they consumed the meal, they reversed this, where the people had the protein, fat, and vegetable portion of the meal, and then 15 minutes later had the same carbohydrate portion of the meal, and again measured blood sugar levels. On average, the participants' blood sugar levels an hour after eating their meals was 37% lower when they had the protein, vegetable, and fats first before the carbohydrates. So they haven't even changed anything at all about what they're eating. They're simply changing the order they're eating it, and it had a 37% change in blood sugar levels. So again, you don't have to look at carbohydrates simply in terms of good or bad. Instead, you can look at strategically how you're using different foods to help better regulate your blood sugar levels instead of cutting all carbohydrates out of your diet. My goal with this video is hopefully to take a bit of the fear away from consuming carbohydrates or thinking that they're bad or something that has to be avoided, and instead look at how you're using your food instead of simply labeling foods as good or bad. What we suggest doing is finding some sort of moderation. So if you'd like to learn more about how to put together meals with a more moderate approach, you can click on this video here, and that'll walk you through a different way of going about controlling how much food you're consuming in an attempt to lose weight.